I would like to read you one of my grown son's favorite stories when he was growing up. I especially like this story because my son, when he was little, didn't like me to read him stories, but when I found this story, he wanted me to read it over and over, and I was so happy. So, today I would like to read it to you. The name of the book is How Droofus the Dragon Lost His Head, written and illustrated by Bill Peet. Once upon a time, there lived a family of dragons. They were a horrible bunch of beasts who traveled about from country to country, stirring up trouble wherever they went. One day, on a trip to some faraway land, the dragon family flew into a dense fog, and Droofus, the youngest of the dragons, lost track of the others. Droofus kept circling about in the endless gray cloud, calling and calling in a squeaky small voice, until at last he was too weary to flap his wings. Then the little dragon gave up and went gliding down to land on a mountainside and crawled into a cave, where he curled up in a corner to sleep for the night. Droofus awoke the next morning feeling very lonely and ever so hungry, so he left his cave to find something for breakfast. Droofus was just 4 years old, and at that age, dragons feed on small things like grasshoppers and beetles. As he was searching the tall grass near the cave, he came across a grasshopper struggling helplessly in a spider web. The spider was all set to pounce when suddenly Droofus snatched the grasshopper out of the web. For a long while, Droofus held the grasshopper by one leg, wondering what to do. How could he eat someone just after saving his life? It didn't seem right. So he finally set the grasshopper free. After that, Droofus gave up eating grasshoppers and beetles and all other things that hopped or crept or crawled. As much as he disliked it, the young dragon took to eating grass. "It tastes awful," he said after one mouthful, "but I'll just have to get used to it." And sure enough, the more grass he ate, the better he liked it. Pretty soon, Droofus found the grass so tasty, he was stuffing it down by the fistful. And in a surprisingly short time, the grass-eating dragon grew into a giant of a monster. A huge, scaly brute with a long, pointed tail and big, leathery bat wings. "Ooh, there's too much of me now," grumbled Droofus. "I'm one big, overgrown lunk with nothing to do but eat and sleep." Then he remembered his wings. He hadn't been on a flight since he was 4 years old, the day he was lost in the fog. "Flying might be fun for a change," he said, and spreading his wings, he sailed up through the pines, then on out over the countryside. It was a perfect day for flying, so sunny and clear, he could make out every haystack that dotted the fields far below. He could see cows in the meadow, ducks in a pond, and a cart traveling along a yellow ribbon of road past the farmhouses. Farther on, there were more roads and more houses, great clusters of houses with a castle towering above the rooftops. It was the castle of the king, and the king was out on a balcony to enjoy the beautiful morning. "Great Gasudikins!" he cried when he caught sight of Droofus. "A dragon! A whopper of a dragon!" And the king watched in amazement until the dragon had sailed away to disappear in the forest, high on the mountainside. "What a marvelous thing it would be," he said, "to have that giant dragon's head on the wall of the great hall." And the king offered a reward of 100 golden quadruples for the dragon's head, which was a lot of money in those days. That same afternoon, every brave knight in the kingdom rode up the mountainside in search of the giant dragon. Droofus was resting against a tree when the clumpety-clump of horses' hoofs and the clankety-clank of armor reaches his ears. The 2-ton dragon was much too weary from his sightseeing trip to go flying again, so he scurried back into his cave to hide. The knights were looking for a cave with bones scattered about the entrance, but if they had gone all the way into one of them, they would have seen Droofus. After one peek into Droofus's cave, they hurried up the mountainside, peeking into all the other caves as they went. The knights searched for months, peeking into hundreds of caves, but not one of them had the look of a dragon's cave. So at last they gave up in despair. The dragon's hideout would have remained a mystery if a lamb hadn't gone astray one evening. The lamb had wandered into the pine forest of the mountainside, and before long a farm boy came looking for her. Lighting the way with a lantern, the boy followed the lamb's trail. Small bits of wool had caught on the brambles here and there. When he came to the cave, he raised his lantern to peer inside. At first there seemed to be nothing in the cave but rabbits. Then, farther back in the dark, he spied a small white blob. It was the lamb curled up beside a scaly, pointed dragon's tail. And looming up to the roof of the cave was the rest of the dragon, sound asleep and snoring. "Here, Flossie. Come on, Flossie," the boy called softly, careful not to awaken the dragon. The lamb finally raised her head, then hopped to her feet, and came trotting out of the cave, and the boy and the lamb went scampering away through the forest. Halfway down the mountain, they met the boy's father, and he was very angry. "How many times must I warn you," he growled, "to stay out of the woods after dark?" "But I had to find Flossie," said the boy, "and you'd never guess where. She was sleeping in a cave with a dragon." A dragon?" stammered his father. Are you sure?" "A giant of a dragon," said the boy. Why, son, did you know there's a reward for his head? 100 gold quadruples. The king's knights have been searching the mountain for months. If you lead the knights to his cave, I'm sure you will get at least part of the reward." "I can't do that," said the boy. "If he wouldn't hurt my lamb, then he must be a good dragon. So I'll never tell anyone where he lives." With nothing to worry about and so little to do, life was getting dull for Droofus, and he decided a change of scenery might help. One day he said goodbye to his cave and took off on a trip to most anywhere. However, he picked the very worst day for flying, and before he knew it, Droofus was caught in a storm. He wheeled around to head back to his cave, but too late. The fierce wind twisted his neck and tail and ripped at his wings and sent him tumbling backward into the clouds. The dragon battled the storm until his wings were tattered to shreds. Then, helplessly as a butterfly, he went whirling down out of the clouds to land with an earth-shaking whoop far out in a field.